Bold predictions for the 2023 NFL season. Are they mine? No. Are they interesting? 100%.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy, that's me. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Trying to get to 3K subscribers on YouTube before the season starts. Well on our way to smashing that number. So for everydayers who've been here for a long time, thank you so much. For those, if this is your first listen and you got it where you get your podcasts, or you stumbled upon it on YouTube, thank you. Stick and stay for a while. It's going to be a good one. We are starting to reach the precipice of list season. We're not there yet. It's getting closer. Okay. And this is a fun time usually because the lists don't really amount to anything. They're talking points. They're fantastic. I like to get some of the writers who do these lists from major publications on the show to kind of talk about the Cardinal-centric ones. Usually these lists are like one I'm going to talk about today. Bold predictions. Teams with the greatest chance to make the playoffs who didn't make the playoffs last year. Teams who made the playoffs last year who have the best chance to miss them this year. Teams on a meteoric rise. Teams could win a Super Bowl in 5 years. Like, there's so many different angles you could take during list season that it's endless. It's endless. Now, with June 1st being tomorrow, there's going to be other storylines for about a week, and then, there's mini camps a couple weeks in. But then after that, there's about a 5-week stretch where it's just lists and future pacing topics. But when I see the Cardinals having 2 of the 5 bold predictions surrounding them by Conor or Sports Illustrated, who I had on the show last offseason, I'm going to try and get him again. Great guest, great writer. One of the best in the business. It piqued my interest because I had another way that I was going to go with today's show, and I'll just shelf that. But there are 2 that are really interesting. I'm going to hit them both. And also, is Budda Baker undervalued or overvalued? And this is a repackaging of my conversation surrounding Budda Baker at a different angle, because I think that the Cardinals should 100% extend Budda Baker. I've talked about it. I've gave my reasons why. I've shown my work. I've argued the other side because I feel like if you're going to have one side of the argument, you should be able to argue the other side to understand both. But is he undervalued, overvalued, or valued just right? I'm going to hit that in the final segment. But the first bold prediction that's centralizing around the Arizona Cardinals is one that's a little bit more obvious. Conor writes, this is the tagline, Kyler Murray will play fewer than 7 games this season, and it will be his last year in Arizona. And while it's easier to talk about, more simple, this is one that's been discussed because it's an option. It's concrete. It's not in the abstract malleability between your ears, just trying to make things up. This is something that could really happen. He could 100% play less than 7 games. And the other part, which is a little bit more far-fetched, in my opinion, this is what makes them bold predictions, that it'll be his last year, but with the Cardinals. But if you look at it, and trust me, if we find out in July that Kyler Murray is not going to be back until like week 10, we can unpack this suitcase. But for now, it is staying way deep in the closet, way deep in the back, collecting spider webs. I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. I'm not talking about any of that stuff because at this point, it's a fool's errand, in my opinion. It would just be clickbait, and that's not what I adhere to, regardless of what some people say, because I like to think outside the box for things. heaven forbid I think the way everybody else thinks. Kyler Murray will play fewer than 7 games this season, and it'll be his last year as an Arizona Cardinal. If Kyler Murray plays less than half the season, especially if they start like 2-9, 2-8, and he comes back in week 11 or something like that, is it better for the future of Kyler Murray, selfishly, like if he could choose to just sit out the year or play 7 games for a team that could win 5 games? And if that's the case, if they do end up winning 5 or 6 games, then that would get them out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes anyways, by, for the most part, unless, Houston has a terrible year, which they're set to do. But I mean, teams win 5. The Jets won 7 games last year. How is that possible? I know Breece Hill early on, they didn't have a quarterback. So if Kyler Murray if he plays less than 7 games and he doesn't play all that well, all it does for the new regime is have lack of proof of concept for Kyler Murray being the future of this organization, especially with the price tag in tow. Not unlike what my biggest fear going into last year was. Say it with me. DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown not playing meaningful snaps together. So at the end of the season, there'd be no proof of concept that would warrant bringing DeAndre Hopkins back. If they played meaningful snaps together last year, and if they won a bunch of games with Kyler Murray healthy, DeAndre Hopkins 100% would have got a contract extension with the Cardinals because they wouldn't have been in a rebuild. Kliff Kingsbury probably wouldn't have been fired. Steve Keim still would have had his job. And while that's a different circle of hell, it would have been with DeAndre Hopkins. But with no proof of concept, makes it a lot easier to move on from a tandem or a player. And with Kyler Murray, it's going to be kind of the same thing. It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy if he plays less than 5 games. Better, worse, indifferent. Unless they have the top 2 picks in next year's draft with theirs in Houston, and they can get collectively 6 or 7, 6 probably first rounders, a bunch of second rounders, and hang on to Kyler Murray, it's on the table. Should it be? Probably not. But again, without proof of concept in 2023, without him playing a majority of the season, by majority I mean about half, because he tore his ACL in December, it's a possibility. It's a bold prediction by Conor Orr, and I think this one has more weight to it. It's very circumstantial. But if you told me that Kyler Murray didn't play another down after the season for the Cardinals, would I be shocked? No. Would I be against it? Probably, but we need to see what happens in 2023. I think moving on from people so quickly is it's this day and age of like instant gratification. Kyler Murray has shown enough for people to believe that he can be great. And I don't understand why that's not the case. Having said that, less than 10 games, new regime, new quarterback, or new head coach, new GM, crazier things have happened. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. I said I wouldn't talk about this guy a lot, and I haven't, only in passing. But when he's mentioned in an article, it gives me the power, carte blanche, as it were, to talk about him. And you better damn believe that person that I'm talking about is Kliff Kingsbury. Next, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. First, this episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but don't want all the sugar and calories, you need to taste the best tasting protein bar ever built. You gotta try this. If you're like me and want to make healthier choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Okay, Built Bar and Built Bar Puffs, healthy, taste amazing. Why? They're covered in 100% real chocolate, okay? They have unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies, and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but it tastes like a candy bar and still has amazing macros. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait on your order by ordering it online. You can get it at Walmart and Sam's Club. You can still get the specialty flavors, obviously, at Built.com. That's right. Head to the nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Everydayers, thanks for hanging out. It means a lot to me. Please reach out to me at Clancy's Corner on Twitter. Send me a DM. Let's have a conversation. Whatever you want to talk about. Topic ideas, segment ideas, debates, whatever. I want this to be a community. I mean, I get DMs, and I appreciate for those who, been around for a long time. Don't be nervous to DM me. Like, I love talking to people. I love it. And I would love to make this more your show than mine, with me as just a, big dumb mouthpiece. Conor Orr, Sports Illustrated, 100 bold predictions for 2023. Kyler Murray will play less than 7 games, and Kyler Murray will not be on the Arizona Cardinals after this season, was his first one. And his second one. Quote, Kliff Kingsbury will somehow factor majorly in the 2023 season and, more importantly, the 2024 draft. And I'm just going to read this, okay? Because Conor Orr is a genius writer, and I don't want to paraphrase this. I don't want to do any of that. Quote, Kingsbury burned himself out working in the substandard conditions offered by the reeling Cardinals. As we know from a few select moribund franchises across the NFL, not much changes if the owner remains the same. Kingsbury is now working at USC with Caleb Williams, who could very well end up the number 1 pick in next year's draft. The Cardinals are also going to be quite bad, perhaps in line with said number 1 pick. Perhaps as a bit of friendly advice, he'll let Williams know there may be better places for him to spend his career. Juicy, right? End quote. What? The nightmare that is Kliff Kingsbury will haunt my dreams forever. Okay, so what? Let's unpack. Now, while there is rational thought in here, it's not without precedence. Eli Manning, John Elway. I'm not playing there. Could you see Caleb Williams doing this with Kliff Kingsbury telling him why? Kliff Kingsbury got everything he wanted. What does he have to worry? What does he have to bark about? Got the quarterback he wanted, got all the skill position players. He was just a bad coach. He's always been a bad coach. And somehow he's had close proximity to Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and now Caleb Williams. I don't understand it. That's truly the definition of insanity. Now, he's not going to be calling the plays. He's going to be working closely with Caleb Williams. Is that good? Could I see Caleb Williams saying, nope, I'm not playing for the Cardinals if they draft him? It's not without precedence. Hence, the genius of Conor Orr here, where it's bold predictions that if they actually happen, you'd be like, wow, there's actual rationale behind that. And this is why I brought this one up specifically. I could have glossed it over. I don't care about Kliff Kingsbury. I don't need to talk about him anymore. I did it for 1,400 days, save weekends. I've had my fill. But the interesting part about this is why building the culture in 2023 is so important. This is why the infrastructure strengthening, the foundation building, the bedrock laying for a future successful organization is so paramount. And I've talked about this a lot. I'll continue to talk about it. Look at the Detroit Lions as the model for what the Arizona Cardinals journey should be like. Win-loss doesn't matter 2023. It kind of doesn't matter in 2024 unless they retain Kyler Murray and everybody's healthy and everything. Like, there's a lot of moving parts with that. What Dan Campbell has done from his moments of biting kneecaps off, where it was like, why is he a coach, to the second half of that season where they beat the Cardinals that year, to last year where they're the most fun team in football. They were on the last game of the year and they beat Aaron Rodgers to keep him from making the playoffs. That's the model franchise the Cardinals should model themselves after. That's the franchise the Cardinals should model themselves after. And that is what? How? Detroit Lions are probably more dysfunctional history-wise than the Cardinals. Cardinals won a championship, 60 years ago or something. But imagine that. The Detroit Lions are the team the Cardinals, in my opinion, should mirror themselves around. Should aim to be like for the next 34 football games. 25, something like that. Hopefully the learning curve, the bell curve is a little bit, easier to maneuver and not so steep. But that's why building this culture starting now is so important. Whether it be Caleb Williams or anybody else, Marvin Harrison Jr., the last thing you want on anybody's mind is a star college player coming out of the draft with the back of their head like, is there a chance that he just says he doesn't want to play for the Cardinals? That's what needs to change. And it can change so quickly. Kliff Kingsbury's gone, Steve Keim's gone. Everything's changed. Now all they have are opportunities and possibilities, things that they had a restrictor plate on for the last 4 seasons for Kliff and 10 seasons for Keim. So when I saw what Conor Orr said, I'm like, that is astute, because there hasn't been a name like Caleb Williams coming out since Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck took over for Peyton Manning. Little bit different. Reggie Wayne, etc. Caleb Williams could 100% say nope. And all the Cardinals can do at this point, because this kind of goes against what I was saying last segment, but these are paralleled, perpendicular, kind of on the same plane, but kind of not. This is just a reminder of what people think of the Arizona Cardinals and how far the Cardinals need to come in an effort to change the perception of this organization. You can't do anything about Michael Bidwell. He ain't selling the team. But what you can do is Monty Ossenfort down, change the internal portion of the team, the innards, the heart of this organization. Michael Bidwell doesn't have the reach that like Jerry Jones does. Michael Bidwell is irrelevant. The Cardinals can change without him. It's better without him. And that's the thing that reminded me to just discuss and, kind of touch base on with you. Is that the Cardinals have a lot of work to do, but it can happen seemingly overnight when things change. Win-loss doesn't matter in 2023. Changing the culture does. What is this culture going to look like with or without Budda Baker? Is he undervalued, overvalued, or is he valued properly? Let's hit that as we roll on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Cardinals. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Each and every day, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, every day, as I said. Check out the Conor Orr article. I think it's number 24 in Conor Orr article. I think it's number 24 and 25 where the Cardinals lay. The rest, it's fun. I mean, it's fun to check out. Is Budda Baker undervalued, overvalued, or just right? And, I thought about this. I did a little introspection because I talk about Budda Baker a lot. I saw my boy Cam Cox get an exclusive interview with him a handful of days ago. He said he'll be ready when he's ready. He'll be ready when the time comes. He'll show up when the time comes, obviously. He's working in the lab. He said something to the effect of he wants to run through offensive linemen at full speed this year. If you think Budda Baker's fallen off, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Look at last year. Do you see the 9 players that were ahead of him last year? The pass rush, non-existent. Sure. Sack numbers, fine. Non-existent. Cornerback room, terrible. Injuries. Linebackers, not good. Imagine if Budda Baker could play in front of a cornerback room that was adequate. Imagine if Budda Baker could actually be an accent for the pass rush instead of being relied upon at times to get pressure on the quarterback. Imagine if Budda Baker could just play safety. Imagine that. So I looked and, I was doing a little introspection, and I was like, am I completely off my rocker all the way on one side of the aisle and not really looking at the other side? So let's do process of elimination. Is Budda Baker undervalued? No. He's not undervalued. People understand how important Budda Baker is to this organization. And I think that's a clear distinction that needs to be made. Is he overvalued? Now, this is where it gets tricky. He's 28 years old. His current contract will, he'll be 30 by the end of that. If they give him 2 more years, he'll be 32. And he's going to be getting a lot of cheese from the safety position. Is he overvalued for what the Arizona Cardinals are looking to achieve for the future? Is he the most important Arizona Cardinal on the roster that's not a quarterback? Is he the most important Arizona Cardinal off the field of all players? Yes. He is the heart of this team. And when you have a team with so much dysfunction and so many ups and downs over the last forever, having a guy that instead of says, I want out because I want money elsewhere, he said, extend me. This was months ago. I think Josh Weinfuss of ESPN, has been on the pulse of this for months. And then, I was like, they got to extend him. I said it right when free agency started because he's going to want more money. This is going to be a tough year, and it's going to be one of his last maybe 5 or 6 years in the league. That's almost 20% of his career left that is going to be down the drain. So you know what? If he wants to remain the leader of this team, you pay him. Monty Ossenfort, you pay him. So is he overvalued? I don't think so. Now, is it going to be a pretty penny now? Sure. Is it going to look like a discount in 3 years? Yup. It's like every damn contract. And the salary cap doesn't really matter for the Cardinals this year because they're going to stink. So why not just give him front load to give a nice signing bonus and then make it team friendly on the back end or add dummy years? Every other team does this. Why do the Cardinals? The Cardinals need to get to a point, just like all Arizona sports teams, need to get to a point where they can facilitate an ecosystem where their fans can root for those players while they're on the Arizona Cardinals and winning, and not having to wait to root for those guys winning when they go somewhere else. The list is, we would be here all day if I was listing all the names of players that went from all sports in Arizona. It's a loser mentality. Pay him. He's valued as he should be. And I'll tell you what, he'll get that money somewhere else, which means he does have value for a team that didn't trade up to draft him in the top of the second round in 2017, for a team that didn't watch him mature and grow as a leader and as a player and become all pro. You don't just throw that away. He's valued exactly how he should be valued, as an all flippin' pro. Pay him and let him lead this defense into the future that's full of possibilities and opportunity, unlike the last decade plus in this organization. Locked on Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.